Hi, my name's Elisabeth Mack. My company's Holistic Caring, and I'm here to teach you how to bridge the gap between traditional and cannabis medicine. Our agenda today is to talk about what the endocannabinoid system is, medical application and safe use of cannabis, PTSD and cannabis, state medical cannabis programs, patient interactions, criminal and legal sanctions, cultivation, handling, and storage, the medical cannabis consultation, American Cannabis Nurses Association, Cannabis Nurses Network, etc. So, and briefly, the scope and standards of practice for nurses. A little bit about my story. My name again is Elisabeth Mack. I've been an RN since 1987, Bachelor of Science in Nursing, Bachelor of Arts in Psychology. Spent my first 10 years in hospitals, and I started at Hines VA Hospital outside Chicago. In 1996, I graduated from my MBA in Healthcare Administration, and then I spent the next 20 years inside insurance companies until I had an accident and decided to change course. In beginning of 2015, I crashed my bicycle, went out on leave to have surgery, and ended up at my chiropractor's office where I was introduced to CBD through a medical massage. The therapist was using CBD in the oil, and I said, "What is this? It smells funny." And she said, "It's cannabis." And I said, "I don't want cannabis." But she proceeded to tell me that I have an endocannabinoid system and that this was going to help my shoulder repair more quickly, lower the inflammation, lower the pain. And I said, "Okay, sign me up and tell me more." And so that was the beginning of my journey. And I have learned how to use cannabis for myself. That entire year of 2015, I started to take a high dose of CBD, microdose THC, and learned how to really add this to my treatment plan so that I could heal. And over a period of a year, I was able to find my way to freedom from all of the pharmaceuticals I was on for pain and inflammation, muscle relaxants, migraines, depression, blood pressure, and even asthma. So it's amazing to be free from everything. And with that, I needed to learn how to teach others. And so I started Holistic Caring in 2016 to bridge the gap for patients and leading them in a case management way through this system. And then as I was writing things down, I started a training manual that I turned into a book, my book, Cannabis for Health, Become a Coach, as well as courses, which also became, from the materials, a complete comprehensive education that I am writing for healthcare professionals and other educators to help them add this to their practice. And I also sit on the board of the American Cannabis Nurses Association, as well as Los Angeles NORML, which is the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, and happen to be treasurer of both of them. So a little history about cannabis and the research around this, so that you have a little bit of setting the stage. In 1937, there was something called the Marijuana Tax Act, where it was removed from our distribution in America, and then finally removed from the pharmacopoeia in 1941. And this was largely racially motivated, as well as corporate interests. Black and brown people were continuing to use cannabis and recreationally smoking it, which was disfavored, as is the corporate interest from DuPont Pharmaceuticals, Hearst in growing timber for paper products, and hemp was just too easily used. So there was a lot going on, but we literally lost access to this plant almost 100 years ago through some interests that were not taking any consideration for patients. But over in Israel, in 1964, there was a professor of medicinal chemistry named Raphael Meshulam, who coincidentally is still working at 85 at Hebrew University. He was the one who isolated and synthesized THC and CBD, figuring out their molecular properties. Back in this country in 1970, Richard Nixon took it a little bit further. They were creating the Controlled Substance Act, Hippies were protesting the Vietnam War, smoking pot, and he said, let's just put cannabis into Schedule 1, which means that it has no medical benefits, highly addictive, dangerous, and abusive. And it sits there with LSD, PCP, psilocybin, and it really has obviously far-reaching medicinal benefits, but that was then, and literally that was how it became an actual felony. So people that have possession of any marijuana or cannabis products were able to go to prison for that. So, but the research continues. 1988, the cannabinoid receptors were identified through radioactive imaging, CB1 and CB2, so named cannabinoid receptor 1 and 2, because that's where they were able to find THC going in the body. And they found that it was the most abundant receptor site in the body. And then a few years later, they found what we make endogenously. Meshulam said, surely we can't just be hardwired for this plant. We must make something internally that activates all these receptors. And so they named the first one anandamide, Sanskrit for bliss, as it activates receptors in CB1, all of our mind, our memory, our motor functions, our sensations and perceptions, and it really gives people that feeling of bliss. So that was the first one, and then 2-AG came a few years after that, and both of them bind to CB1 and CB2 receptors in our body. Meanwhile, California in 1996 was the first legal state to allow medical marijuana purposes. And then in 1999, the NIH decided they really wanted to look at this and set up the Center for Medical Cannabis Research right here at UCSD in San Diego. And a couple of years after that, the US government filed a patent on cannabinoids as very potent antioxidants and neuroprotectants. And, which really flies in the face of hypocrisy, saying that it's a Schedule 1 drug with no medical properties. So this is the patent. And, the guys that filed the patent said that cannabinoids are found to protect cells, tissues, and DNA from damage and decay, limiting neurological damage following ischemic insults such as stroke, trauma, or to be used in the treatment of neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia. So there you go. So cannabis is a plant. Let's talk about this, in a philosophical standpoint for a moment. It has been used for thousands of years in humans as medicine. Cannabis is something that has grown with us as populations of humans throughout history. And it has been something that we used to graze our animals on and eat, and it was in our food supply, and it was restorative to our bodies. And we just didn't know about it until we have all this science now. But it's always been a plant that we have been able to use. It is one of the most richest plants on earth. It has at least 500 different compounds. We call them cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids. And the medicines are in the trichome. So if you look at this thick, purple, stalky, sticky resinous substance in the middle, that's what you would trim all the leaves around from and take that into extraction to make the medicines and the oils and the formulations, or you could inhale it and smoke it and that sort of thing. But that's where the medicines are. You can use the entire plant by juicing it and putting that in smoothies and that sort of thing for absolute super health. There's something called pleiotropic, which is one of my favorite words, and it means that it affects several different physiologies simultaneously, which I think is what is so special about this plant. When you watch the nightly news and you hear the advertisements for pharmaceuticals, you take this pill, you're going to get all these side effects. Cannabis goes the other way. When I started to use high doses of CBD and microdose THC, I was able to remove one by one pharmaceuticals for inflammation, muscle relaxants, migraines, depression, blood pressure, asthma, etc. Right? That's pleiotropic in the right way. And over time, patients find their freedom from a lot of different pharmaceuticals and they just function better. Also, it facilitates health promotion. So I like to couple cannabinoid medicine with functional or lifestyle medicine and really try to reiterate how patients can use this to be health promotion, changing their nutrition, changing their movement, their walking, their stretching, their exercise, meditation, spirituality, connection, speaking up, setting boundaries. There are all kinds of ways that you can use these plant compounds for that. So quickly, how cannabis works. We have this endocannabinoid system, which was discovered in 1992. And what it does is provide the retrograde feedback to maintain homeostasis. It's the feedback mechanism of regulation between cell signaling that allows backward messaging, the retrograde feedback. We've got more of these CB1 and CB2 receptors in our body than any other receptor system, and they all provide balance at the cellular level, or homeostasis. We can fall deficient. Modern lifestyle, not sleeping, poor diets, not getting whole plant food nutrition, not sleeping, working ourselves filled with stress. All of these conditions start to degrade the endocannabinoid system so it doesn't work well. And when we start getting chronic diseases, we know we have an ECS deficiency. Well, we can supplement and correct the cellular dysfunction with THC, which absolutely mimics anandamide and 2-AG to supplement and activate those CB1, CB2 receptors to restore balance at the cellular level. CBD doesn't activate either one of those receptors. It hits about 50 to 60 other receptors in the body, but it really is the neuroprotectant, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory medical miracle that is fine-tuning our body all over the place. And it also directly activates 5-HT, which helps us make serotonin, lowering our anxiety, our pain, and helping us sleep and rest, and as well as maintaining antidepressant effects. 3 components to the ECS. Again, we have the locks, the CB1, CB2, the keys, the agonist ligands that are anandamide and 2-AG from the endocannabinoids, and then degrading enzymes, Fa and Mogul. These cannabinoids basically provide the master key that open the door to many rooms or physiologies. They are proficient all over the body. When you think about CB1, CB2, they're literally in every one of our cells and organs. We also know that the phytocannabinoids and the endocannabinoids activate a bunch of other receptors like TRPV1, G protein coupled receptors all over the place, GABA, opiate receptors, etc. So this system crosses all of the other systems. And there's an Italian scientist named Vincent Damarzo who coined the term eat, sleep, relax, forget, and protect in describing the endocannabinoid system. And when you think about the regulation of our appetite, our food perceptions, how we're hungry, then all of our digestion, how we sleep, our circadian rhythms, how we're able to relax and restore, being able to forget, trimming aversive memories. Cannabinoid system is very implicated in that, and protect our basic immune system, our blood pressure, blood sugar, temperature, etc. Sexual reproduction, the reproductive organs, breast milk, chock filled with endocannabinoids. In fact, when the mother is feeding a baby with breast milk, that milk coma that the baby is exhibiting of just joy is pure anandamide that has been transferred from the mother to the baby. And that bliss is evident of anandamide, which also coincidentally causes the runner's high. So it threads throughout every one of our systems. And this is a picture, a close-up of retrograde signaling. So normally our transmissions go from presynaptic to postsynaptic. This is enabling the endocannabinoids to be manufactured, synthesized on demand in response to stress, float backwards to the cannabinoid receptors, activate and plug in, and then change the physiologic functions of that cell. So maybe this is producing excessive glutamate, there's a seizure happening, we need to lower the glutamate, stimulate GABA, and reduce that seizure. But this is how the body communicates by sending the endocannabinoids to basically fulfill those messages and those missions. And then they're degraded immediately once they are used. The degrading enzymes, Fa and Mogul, do not work on the phytocannabinoids. They only work on the endocannabinoids. And that is why, we're not high all the time, we're not feeling bliss all the time, because A, we're probably deficient, and B, these are only fulfilling a microsecond purpose, and then they're dissipated. So Ethan Russo, who's a very famous neurologist and botanist, cannabis scientist, He coined the term a medicinal treasure trove with respect to this plant and all it can do. From a preclinical data, we basically have observational data in humans. We're not allowed to study it because of the Schedule 1 ban on research. But preclinical data shows that the endocannabinoids, the phytocannabinoids, all modulate several of these systems and can work neurologically to level out GABA and glutamate, calcium channels, and all of our neurotransmitters. They impact every single one of them, from norepinephrine, dopamine, serotonin, and so that leads right into psychiatry, managing anxiety, depression, PTSD, insomnia, ADD, even schizophrenia with CBD only, no THC with psychosis. That's one of the contraindications for this. But it also can stimulate neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. You see people being able to apply new learning and changing behaviors. Autoimmune conditions, we can stabilize the response where our body needs to turn on inflammatory conditions so that we can heal, but it also needs to be able to turn those off again and not take out autoimmune conditions causing us more and more distress. Also has really big impacts on cardiovascular and metabolic syndrome. We can lower diabetes by improving insulin sensitivity with cannabinoids on board. So many people with pre-diabetes can work on that. I have personally gotten people to be able to wean off of metformin and lower insulin. So it's amazing what even just CBD can do long-term. On cancer, preclinical data shows that cannabinoids are anti-neogenic, so they will basically put the cancer cells under siege and take away their rich red blood supply. They will make sure that they don't spread and send out those genes and IDK to ignite proliferation. So cannabinoids will stop that and shut it down, as well as to re-trigger apoptosis and telling that cancer cell to turn off, allow normal cell digestion and to go away, which will shrink the tumors. So this is all preclinical, but on the palliative side, we know that patients are using cannabinoids to lower nausea and vomiting, to get through chemotherapy, to treat radiation burns with topicals, as well as reducing pain, reducing anxiety, giving them a better sense of presence with their family, and just doing better. Alzheimer's, reducing beta amyloid plaques is something they're proving with THC at the Salk Institute. We also know that the neurodegenerative conditions are aided by CBD in the neuroprotective ways, right? And inhibiting some of the cell death in the neurons, so we can help people with Alzheimer's as well as Parkinson's in regulating dopamine, but also modulating the tremors, helping aid some of the rigidity in the spine and some of the leaning and postural issues, as well as mood and sleep. And for MS, Sativex from GW Pharmaceuticals is on the market in 30 different countries to treat MS spasticity. Also helps interstitial cystitis, pain, depression, and other issues in MS. And for pain, pain is the #1 reason people come to cannabis as medicine in all of the states that have qualifying conditions. Research shows that cannabinoids work for nociceptive pain, central pain, and neuropathic pain in various ways. So THC, THCA, CBDA, CBD, all of these work conjunctively, and a good 1-to-1 oil will help patients wean off of opiates, modulating the pain as well as minimizing the withdrawal, because from opiates, cannabinoids can be used to quell some of the muscle spasms and shakes, tremors, anxiety, stomach cramping, etc. when people are weaning off opiates. All of that can be reduced as well as treating the pain, and it's amazing to see people almost being able to have their dose of opiates over a very short period of time. In addictions, CBD can balance and reduce cravings when they have CBD on board in rats. The rat or the mice are not pushing the lever for the opioids half as much when they have CBD on board. So that is very telling from a preclinical standpoint, but also as people are using cannabinoids and cannabis, or even just smoking pot, they're slowly walking away from alcohol and other illicit drugs as we study this and collect the numbers. So there's plenty of anecdotal information on that as well online. So a recap just with CBD specifically, it activates this endocannabinoid system. It promotes anandamide, our own endocannabinoids, by inhibiting FAAH. So when you take CBD as a supplement, you're basically creating more anandamide and keeping the anandamide in your system longer by taking out the enzyme that degrades it. CBD reduces inflammation. This is really good for our joints and muscles and pain, but also the neural inflammation and the gut inflammation that keep us unhealthy. And CBD quiets nerve distress. So our neuropathic, neuralgias, central pain, CBD is quite effective, again, with a little THCA. The acidic molecules. CBD supports a healthy stress response. So our HPA axis, very implicated in this. Dopamine, serotonin, and endocrine functions, our wellness, our immune response to stress. So since I've started taking high doses of CBD in 2015, I don't think I've had a cold. I haven't had the flu, and it's really been quite amazing. And many people are like that. Once they start boosting their health with this, they find that the immune response is strengthened. And the ECS deficiency, we are finding that, again, Ethan Russo has a lot published in PubMed on clinical endocannabinoid deficiency syndromes causing chronic diseases. And you can supplement to bring that back to health. And boosting the CBD efficacy is best done with some THC. You can do that with full spectrum cannabinoid oils, as well as just microdoses of THC by itself. So when people ask me who cannabis is good for, I have to chuckle because there are 7 billion of us on this planet and every one of us has an ECS. The scientists are proving all of the clinical therapeutic applications of this. On the clinical side, we're falling behind, but it's not a minute too soon because 1 out of 2 of us have a chronic condition and almost all of us can be helped with phytocannabinoids. So the FDA approved cannabinoids, before I go to the plant, let me just recap that we already have in the supply chain in the pharmaceuticals, Marinol, which is dronabinol, 2.5, 5, 10 milligrams, and that's synthetic THC. Sesamet is a little bit smoother, a little bit easier to take, less psychoactivity. Patients don't like either one of these synthetic THCs. They're too jarring. The intoxication is a little bit too intense. And without CBD to buffer and balance the THC, some people find it very hard to take, which is why most of the AIDS patients they had Marinol, but they wanted to be able to smoke pot because it was so much easier to do to reduce the nausea and vomiting, which is what those are approved for. For Epidiolex, this came on the scene in 2018 as being an approved FDA drug and went on sale as a Schedule 5. It is purified CBD, and it works for refractory seizure disorders, Lennox-Gastaut, and Dravet syndrome. That's what it's approved for. GW Pharmaceuticals, who also made Sativex, is trying to expand the utilization, but it's $3,000 a month. So the kids with seizures, they could spend that, or they could get some CBD oil at a good dispensary and maybe save a lot of money. So let's turn to the phytocannabinoids. There are many of them. And most of the time you're going to hear about CBD and THC. There are acidic molecules that are CBDA and THCA, which are the raw components of the plant. So before they're heated and processed into final goods, you have the raw forms, and those are very effective. CBN is a degraded form, so that's an old form, and CBC and a lot of the other CBG, etc. Those are other cannabinoids that come together to make the whole plant into the phytonutrients that we need. CBD is generally seen, again, as that neuroprotectant antioxidant, but it's also very good at treating inflammation, anxiety and depression, activating 5-HT, diabetes, improving insulin sensitivity, blood pressure, lowering the need for antihypertensives because it's such a potent vasorelaxant, and then working with bones, osteoporosis, being able to work with the osteoblasts and osteoclasts to really activate both CB1 and CB2 are implicated in that. Pain and spasms are somewhat useful with CBD, but really for those, you want to turn over to THC. THC is what we're going to use more for pain, those spasms, and to stimulate appetite. Cachexia is absolutely boosted by having THC on board, and insomnia. That's the other thing, because THC, especially in high doses, is very sedating. So what we have available in the dispensary today really is this list. There's about 100 different cannabinoids, maybe 140 as far as scientists are counting, but all of them provide healing benefits to soothe us back to balance. THC is the only one that is intoxicating. So all of the other phytocannabinoids can be used without intoxication any time of day. Again, there's terpenes as well, and terpenes basically drive the taste, smell, aroma, flavor, etc. of cannabis, as well as the overall effects. So is it invigorating and energizing, or is this something that's sedating, is going to be good for anxiety and pain management and just to go to sleep? So terpenes are what basically influence that. We always want to encourage a full spectrum whole plant where all of these cannabinoids come together, harmonize and synergize each other into the entourage effect. And 1 + 1 + 1 is now 3, it's 10, maybe even 20. That's the power of using these cannabinoids together, as opposed to the isolates of just CBD or just THC. It really needs to belong together. So how do you get these into the body? There are many routes of administration. The first is vaporization, so smoking or inhaling through a vape. It's easily titrated. Onset is in minutes, very fast acting, and very short duration, only an hour or two. The effects are mild to intense depending on the THC potency and the presence of CBD. CBD can knock THC off of the CB1 receptor as a partial allosteric modulator of CB1, CBD is. So when THC is given together with CBD, it is not as intense of an intoxication. So that's a good note for you. So edibles are the opposite side. Long onset, 30, 60, 90 minutes on a full stomach. Duration 4 to 8 hours. With excessive potency, it might be 12 hours. But the rule is start low, go slow. Dosing controls the effects, and everybody should learn microdosing when it comes to edibles with THC, starting with 1 to 5 milligrams. You don't need to have a bad experience. So many people are like, they had a horrible experience with edibles, and it's just improper dosing. So we can prevent that. And then you can make capsules with the oils as well. And I have GI here because then this goes through the gastrointestinal system. It has the most interactions with pharmaceuticals and coincidentally the lowest bioavailability. So capsules are wanted, but not necessarily all that well in supply. Tinctures, elixirs, sublingual sprays, etc. This is where most of the medicine is, in my opinion, and we can get quite creative on all of the different formulations. But you're going to penetrate the oral mucosa. We have a vast array of blood supply in our mouth. So you hold the tincture drops in the mouth for 60 seconds before you swallow, allowing the absorption right in through the oral mucosa. Mild effects, easy to control and titrate by milligrams. All the doses are calibrated with a dropper in the bottle. Makes it really easy. Onset is pretty moderate, 15 minutes. Duration about 6 hours for most people. They redose every 4, 6, 8 hours with tinctures. And then you can get concentrated oils. Most of those are for the recreational market. Suppositories provide localized healing and comfort and can be rectal or vaginal. And then topicals and transdermal patches are very popular for localized relief. Topical is generally people's first experience with cannabis medicine. They just use the CBD topical and find that it's been amazing as far as that efficacy to help their knee move again. So my job as a clinician is to help people mix and match this page to maximize the benefits, minimize the harms, and have the best levels of efficacy. Side effects. Side effects with THC are all dose dependent. So I can't reiterate that enough. People don't need to have a bad experience with THC. Just using a couple of milligrams is enough. Anything beyond that can trigger dizziness, tachycardia, disorientation, confusion, paranoia, dry mouth, dry eyes, red eyes, short-term memory impairment, anxiety. Again, low doses of THC is going to quell anxiety, be anxiolytic. High doses of THC is anxiogenic. So 5 milligrams is going to make you nice and calm. 15 to 20 milligrams, you're going to be paranoid and very anxious. So it's all dose dependent. Low blood pressure and blood sugar can happen. Always be hydrated and fed, as well as making sure that you're using THC appropriately. Don't use it during the day because it is sedating. Many people want bronchodilation, especially when you add a terpene called pinene. It can really open up the lungs. Muscle relaxants and increasing the appetite. Excessive THC causes something called hyperemesis syndrome, generally seen in youth who smoke high THC all day and then they get extremely sick. CBD, dizziness, hyperactivity, sedation. So again, the biphasic nature, not just CBD and THC, but all of the cannabinoids. Low doses and high doses can do opposite of things. It can decrease appetite. And again, cause a little bit of tachycardia. Cytochrome P450 enzymes, I teach people there's grapefruit interactions. Most of the time we're talking potentiation when it comes to side effects. You really need to be cautious with Coumadin, warfarin. INR can be elevated, as well as SSRIs, some heart meds. With serotonin, you really have to watch taking too much CBD because you can actually make too much. None of these are going to be fatal. That's one of the beautiful things about this plant. There are no CB1, CB2 receptors in the brainstem that control our respiration and cardiovascular functions. And so all of these side effects just dissipate with time, usually, again, in the duration, right? So 2, 4, 6, 8 hours, you will be out of the woods with any of these. This is patient-centered care. We've been using that phrase as healthcare professionals forever, but this truly is what is going to empower patients. This is personalized medicine. They're in the driver's seat, and they have control over how they use these medicines. They can dose different cannabinoids, and then we can look at this line up here, high THC on the left, high CBD on the right, and everything in between. So there's a lot of flexibility in formulations, so we can teach people, CBD during the day, THC during the evening and nighttime. There's residuals, so the THC you took at bedtime is still going to be causing some pain management during the day, but not impairing. So it can be very beautiful. And this is really body, mind, spirit medicine. It affects people on a physical, emotional, and a spiritual level like nothing else, because it's not working just on a receptor standpoint where it's like a physiological reaction like pharmaceuticals, single molecule pharmaceuticals. So this is something that's going to activate the receptors. Let's just take IBS. It's going to quiet the gut things that are going wrong with respect to propulsion, secretions, etc., calming IBS, Crohn's, etc. But it's also going to stop some of the incessant thinking and some of the worry that excessive glutamate is stimulating in the brain that's causing all of this, right? Turning down that fight or flight, getting us back into the parasympathetic systems and quieting things. And over time, people start to say, I'm so much more happy. I'm just, my soul is just free. And that is an amazing thing to hear patients say over time. And over time is what matters. Cumulative dosing is key. This is not going to be immediate. Sometimes I see, vast improvements in a week or two in people. Other times it might take a month. And I've had calls 6 months later and say, I'm glad I stuck with it because I really feel better now. And I wanted to give up before, but I'm really glad I stayed with it. And tracking is something that I teach all of my clients. 1 to 10, where are we at today? Pain, anxiety, mood, memory, focus. How easy is it to smile today? And how easy is it going to be in 3 weeks, authentically? What are your energy levels? Are you productive? Are you getting things done? How are you sleeping? What is the sleep quality? And then blood pressure, blood sugar, any changes to that? We want to look to talk to that prescriber for that other medicine, as well as then monitoring the dosing. I have another form that I give them to track actual products. And this really gets us talking on my follow-up calls. And everybody should be doing this regardless if they're professionally managed. But this is the way forward to managing these medicines. So let's talk a little bit about veterans and PTSD. This is something I work with a lot and hope to work with more. And I inspire all of you to learn more about this so that you can help these veterans. At least 20% have PTSD, especially in the last 20 years with the wars that we've had. We still have 22 people ending their lives every day, which is 22 too many. And PTSD is a condition that is really typified by neuroinflammation, shrinkage of the amygdala and hippocampus, rational thought loss, flashbacks, fear, intrusive memories, hyperarousal, anger, shame, and guilt. These folks have difficulty sleeping, nightmares, aversive memories, and anxiety, depression, anhedonia, lack of joy. Many of them have feelings of mistrust, broken families. This can be generations of trauma in families that is not really healed by anything. And when we think about traditional treatment, we've got our cocktails, right? Benzodiazepines, antidepressants, antipsychotics, anticonvulsants, sedatives, and what we're just creating is doped up people that have nothing resolved underneath. So, this is an article. Brian Crum is a nurse practitioner in New Mexico. He's an ACNA colleague of mine, writes extensively on VA. He's a psychiatry nurse practitioner and works extensively with veterans. So anybody wants to follow Brian Crum, I urge you to sign up for his alerts and read some of his PTSD work. So how does cannabinoids help PTSD? Well, we know that the ECS plays a central role in regulating fear, stress, and anxiety. Preclinical research shows that stimulation of CB1 receptors reduces fear-related behavior, stress responses, anxiety, and THC, directly activating CB1. The amygdala, the fear, and the hippocampus, the memory centers, have many CB1 receptors. So THC directly activating that is going to reduce some of the fight or flight things that are happening here and improve and heal with neurogenesis in the hippocampus area. So we've also found that PTSD patients in imaging have enhanced receptor expression, so they're seeking. This is also common in cancer cells, where the receptors are more prevalent on the diseased or sick cells. And they're looking for the endocannabinoids to balance them out. When the endocannabinoids are not being manufactured, the phytocannabinoids can go in and supplement and mimic that to activate all of these receptors. So in this case, cannabis is going to activate and allow the letting go of the aversive memories. Anxiety and depression also reduced by CBD, activating that 5-HT receptor, quieting, calming, and helping with sleep. So, and these notes were from Cannabis RX, a good magazine that you can get that comes out monthly. So Amazon Prime had a movie that I saw last month, and it's called The Cannabis Solution for PTSD. I believe it was produced and promoted by Green Flower Media, which has got a lot of great content out there as well. They were featuring Operation EVAC, which is what they termed this veterans-led group. And it's a cannabis support group. They hear each other's struggles, share the journey, and they learn how to control their own medical path, which is really empowering to these guys that were taking these cocktails of drugs, slowly letting those go. And they also integrate meditation and other therapies to speed up the integration of emotions and allowing healing. Many of these guys have said, this is a life and death struggle, and with cannabis, I feel I can go on, which was really telling, as was all of the reports of lowering alcohol use, lowering other substances and other pharmaceuticals, going outside, take a puff, I can calm down. That takes us to lowering anxiety, rage, anger, aggression, depression, angst, agitation. These people are having a lot less pain, inflammation. Many of them have weaned off opiates, as well as getting rid of the night terrors and the aversive memories, along with the suicidal ideation. And then you hear them say, you know, I have a love for life now, which is priceless for somebody that may have been suicidal. Productivity, being able to go back to work, that is amazing. And then strengthening interpersonal relationships. This coupled with therapy, getting people to speak up, set healthy boundaries, feel like they're part of the whole, is amazing in that work. So go to Amazon Prime and look for the cannabis solution for veterans. So when we talk about cannabis over pharmaceuticals, when we look at our medical marijuana states, there are 25% less overdoses in legal states. So if we look at California versus Mississippi, let's look at those numbers, or any of those other states, right? Georgia versus New York. We have far fewer overdoses in legal states, as is lower prescriptions. And when we stop writing medicines for pain, we can also, based on the pleiotropic nature of cannabinoids, lose anxiety, nausea, psychosis, seizures, etc. Right? And when we stop prescribing so many drugs, we save money. Let's take the money that we save and put that into health promotion and find out how to better utilize cannabinoids as medicine rather than just continue to take another pill for every ill. So shifting to the legal stuff, the legal landscape in America, again, California was the first to pass the Compassionate Use Act, allowing medical marijuana. That was quickly challenged by the DEA, wanting to prescribe jail doctors for giving this to patients. But then Congress said that physicians, healthcare professionals have a First Amendment right to recommend cannabis and to discuss it. That's how we got recommend instead of prescribe. Then there's been lots of laws that basically said the feds have to stay out of the state programs with their Department of Justice. And then in 2018, the Farm Bill descheduled industrial hemp, which is why, in 2019, there was just an absolute boom of CBD everywhere. And so there's more to come on that. When we have state cannabis programs, look in the so everything in green has a program. The dark green has adult use or recreational access. There are many states that are voting to go from medical to adult or recreational use in this election, there are states that are just coming on for medical. So this 33 is going to increase in number by the end of the year. The qualifying conditions that are most commonly used to apply for a medical marijuana card are these. California has any medical condition that a physician feels may benefit from cannabinoids, and there are several states following that course. Patient considerations, there's still many, right? And so the qualifying conditions, PTSD is valid in about half of the states. So what if the patient moves, right? And they go from one state to another state. Cannabis users without legal access, so in a non-legal state, criminally charged with misdemeanors or felony based on the quantity that they are possessing and the intention of that. Obviously, if they're going to sell it, that's a felony. Patients are still seen as substance abusers in traditional care systems. I have THC in my system, and if I go into the hospital for something, they're going to think I'm an addict of cannabis when I'm taking a tincture every night for sleep, right? It's crazy. And then drug testing makes it hard to change jobs or maintain jobs, always living in fear of having a drug test. And of course, there's no insurance coverage for any of these medicines. It's all out of pocket, as is the recommendation process to get a card, as is the consultations with a specialist like me. So it's very expensive. NORML.org, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, has national fact sheets on all of the state-by-state programs as well as the qualifying conditions. And now they say that about 70% of Americans live in a state with access to medical cannabis programs. And those that get it, the average is that they can possess an ounce of flower, 8 grams of concentrate or oils, and they can grow 6 plants. So marijuanapolicyproject.org is another great reference resource for you. Congress is taking baby steps to change things, and the most important one on this page is the MORE Act. It was supposed to be voted on in September this year, and it was postponed due to COVID as well as politics. But the MORE Act will deschedule cannabis, taking it completely out of the Controlled Substance Act, decriminalizing it across the board, expunging the records, and releasing prisoners in this country that are jailed for cannabis. So the MORE Act has to pass as soon as possible. Kamala Harris is a sponsor of this bill in the Senate, so we'll see what happens. Cultivation, handling, and storage. Seed to harvest is about 10 to 26 weeks. And patients that grow their own find that it is extremely therapeutic to take care of these plants, nurture them along the process, and to cultivate and harvest them and know that they can take this in their own hands. All of these medicines that are grown, whether a patient grows them themselves or anything in the licensed supply chain, should be lab tested for potency, purity, making sure that it's free from pesticides, contaminants, heavy metals, molds, contaminants, other things that could be in these plants, and so they should all be tested. The CBD or cannabis flowers, so the actual flower from the plant, will degrade if exposed to air or UV light. So colored glass protects that from happening. Make sure that you keep edibles, tinctures, vapes, oils, etc. out of reach of children. You know, some of the state laws are all about, you know, diversion and making sure that kids don't find these packages appealing. And there's a lot of controversy when it comes to gummies and chocolates and that sort of thing. Beverages that are now in the recreational markets that are just easy to get into kids' hands. So always make sure these medicines are safe. And some of the extracts and tinctures should actually be refrigerated, especially THCA or CBDA that you don't want to break down. So a cool, dark place is generally where things should be stored. Shopping. So there are several different kinds of CBD. CBD from cannabis that's in a dispensary, you know, so like a 20-to-1 CBD THC, that's going to be in a dispensary, and it's going to have more than 0.3% or more THC in it. So it's a whole plant, full spectrum oil. It's going to have all of the other cannabinoids, terpenes, and phytonutrients, and be very rich from the female flowers as well. Hemp CBD is a stalky type of process. It's completely different. The male industrial hemp plants that grow this one, and these are bred so that the THC is 0.03 or less THC. And this is what can be sold across state lines as CBD in the legal system. Broad spectrum is a full spectrum oil that has had THC completely extracted. Isolates take it even further and put the CBD into a powder form, so it's literally just the CBD. And both of those are THC free, right? So people that want to use CBD that are fearful of employer drug testing, they can use either the broad spectrum or the isolate without fear of a positive urine drug screen. Every other kind of CBD oil, even if it's hemp CBD, that could cumulatively build up. Cannabinoids are lipophilic, stored in the fat, and you know, with enough dosing of a hemp CBD oil, some people could still turn positive. So note of caution there. So let's look at our federal literature review. In 2017, the National Academy of Science, or the NIH, published an exhaustive literature review of the health effects of cannabis and cannabinoids. You can see this book here. And they basically had conclusive or substantial evidence that cannabinoids are effective for chronic pain, chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting, and MS spasticity. It also found evidence to support that cannabis is effective for individuals with short-term sleep outcomes, improving them, that have COPD, sleep apnea, fibromyalgia, chronic pain, and MS. So you can look at that, nationalacademies.org, look at that book, and you can go through all the studies. Coincidentally, most of those studies do study the isolate of THC, Marinol or dronabinol. Epidiolex was not out yet, but they could use also isolate CBD studies. So not many of these studies talked about whole plant. As far as nursing, the National Council for a State Board of Nursing published their literature review. This special supplement to the Journal of Nursing Regulation came out in 2018 and gave all of their evidence-based guidelines that they found and did the assessment of the system. They found that it's a huge contradiction that federal law classifies this as a Schedule I drug going against state programs allowing its use. Also, the catch-22 is really pretty horrible. It bans cannabis from being prescribed, so there's no clinicians in on the mix. And then there's no clinical data being recorded because it's illegal to study cannabis. You cannot get a Schedule I license in this country. So people that want to study this go through all kinds of hoops and still get nowhere. So our clinical data is not happening. And so they're imploring us to research specific conditions, dosage, adverse effects, long-term use of cannabis effects, and without scientifically rigorous evidence based on real patient populations, nurses face challenges providing care to patients taking medical marijuana. So you can find that at the ncsbn.org website. And their guidelines specifically said that all nurses should have a working knowledge of the current legal state of cannabis, the state of the medical marijuana program in the state, an understanding of the endocannabinoid system, the receptors, cannabinoids, and the interactions between these systems, general understanding of cannabis pharmacology and basic research, awareness of their own facilities, policies, and then to be able to manage a clinical encounter with medical cannabis patients to assess the effects of what they're doing, communicate clinical findings to care providers and document those interactions, identify risk factors and safety considerations for individual use. And obviously nurses shall not dispense or administer medical marijuana medications unless the nurse is designated as a caregiver with sponsored forms. So in my setup in California here, I have a patient card, I have a caregiver card, and back when it was legal, I had a Prop 215 collective before they took away those rights for people to have this. So now you just have to send everybody to the dispensary and guide people through the online menus. But nurses, as far as NCSB is concerned, still are hands-off other than providing this guidance. The nursing consult, I've been asked to describe my process, and basically what I do is teach others how to apply the medical process to cannabis. So first, you start with an assessment. You do a review of systems and pharmaceuticals. What are their goals and objectives to using cannabis? Then do a holistic assessment. Talk about their nutrition. Are they eating fresh whole plants and vegetables and getting whole food? Are they moving? Are they stretching? Are they walking and strengthening? Are they connected? Are they speaking up? Are they praying? Are they meditating? Are they spiritual? What are their joys and hopes, and what are their fears? I always ask people, tell me something that you're really looking forward to, that we can help you get to your best state so that you can approach with joy. And then educate them. Educate them on the ECS, the cannabinoids, CBD and THC and the terpenes and how they all work, all those modes of administration and dosing, setting minimums or maximums, 5 to 10 milligrams twice a day, up to, of a various oil, like a 4-to-1 or a 1-to-1 CBD THC, and setting expectations. Cannabis is not a panacea, doesn't work for everybody, but for most people it can help. And then help them develop a plan and implement that. Set the initial guidelines on what to take, how to shop for licensed medicines that are safe, and then establish that tracking so you can gauge efficacy and help them get ongoing support by giving them some references and resources. The American Cannabis Nurses Association was founded in 2010 by Mary Lynn Mothra and Patients Out of Time nurses. They still have the best medical conference that I go to each year. And they're focused on science and clinical practice. Lots of great clinicians in the ACNA. And the mission is to advance excellence in cannabis nursing practice through advocacy, collaboration, education, research, and policy development. I get to say that every other week at my executive council meetings. The scope and standards of practice are deep. I'm just going to ask you to go to the website, cannabisnurses.org, and then click on scope of practice for cannabis nurses. Really, it kind of mimics the NCSP guidelines, and really puts the clinical spin on it. CNN, and ACNA has about 1,500 members right now in America. CNN is the Cannabis Nurses Network. They were founded 5 years later in 2015. And CNN is a professional nursing organization supporting business development for nurses. They're educating nurses on the science behind the plant and providing a global nursing network. Nurses are supported and empowered to implement their knowledge within their community, making a difference for patients. So I like to say that ACNA is a little more academic and CNN is a little more business. And that seems to be how it shakes out in this country. This is the fastest growing industry on earth, bar none. New Frontier sales data shows that the legal cannabis industry in America is about $15 billion. The medical, recreational, and hemp-based sales are predicted to reach almost $100 billion by the end of this decade. And right now, we have about 300,000 US jobs that are in cannabis. About 250,000 of those are plant touching, which means that somebody works directly in the field touching the plant. So dispensaries, cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, etc. Then there's a lot of non-plant touching, advertising, marketing, law, etc. So please learn the alternative is a bud tender. God loved all the bud tenders, but they should not be practicing medicine. Yesterday, I got a call from a bud tender at a dispensary saying, hey, does inhalation bypass first-pass metabolism and inhibit drug interactions? Because I'm trying to teach patients. And I'm like, you should not be doing that as a bud tender. So it's interesting. Everybody that is a healthcare professional, I do implore you to learn this because every patient deserves somebody that can really help break this down. And with that, I created my programs, the Holistic Caring Health Coaching and Licensing Program. I've created a license where somebody is able to take a comprehensive online training in all of the ramifications of history, research, science, products, pharmacology, treating neurological, neurodegenerative, cancer, autoimmune, mental health, holistic health, functional medicine, as well as all of the other ramifications of adding this to our practice and the business of cannabis. Then I have mastermind groups that have a monthly webinar where we do case studies and deep dives on products and training. I have a toolkit of forms that I give clinicians that want to work in this, short and long form assessments, patient teaching, everything that you need to walk somebody through this appointment, care plans, dosing guides, formularies where I break down the modes of use of all of the different products in a California dispensary with onset, duration, how they work, what minimum and maximum dosing should be, and the formula notes. And then I have Community 101 presentation with just 30 short slides so somebody can go out and present this in their neighborhood and then be able to quickly enjoy the art of medicine. One of my favorite things about this whole work is that it bridges science and logic and art and spirituality and intuitive practice of medicine. So it really is an amazing occupation. So thank you for learning. I hope you have enjoyed this hour with me to explore the endocannabinoid system in cannabis medicine. I am truly honored to teach you the little bit I have today. And if you'd like to learn more, you can get my book, Cannabis for Health, Become a Coach, at holisticcaring.com. Email me, Elisabeth with an S, at holisticcaring.com. And I'd like to just close with Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam is heal the world in Hebrew. And it's also the largest dispensary and medical research facility in Israel and has been operating at least a past decade. And they are the world ruler of research. So go to Tikkun Olam and you can find out more there as well. So God bless you, stay safe, and go heal the world. Thank you.